Hey guys, AB here, ABC's Boxing. Going to talk about the post-fight review of Golovkin-Lemieux. I enjoyed the pay-per-view. I thought it was really exciting. I was kind of bored halfway through the first fight, and then enjoyed the knockout reel of the second fight, even though it was a complete mismatch. Really enjoyed the Gonzalez fight. And then after that, on to Golovkin. So first thing that we're going to talk about is the jab. I knew Golovkin already had a good jab. I mean, he showed it in the Stephens fight. If you watch his past amateur fights, the guy has an extremely good, had a really, really good jab, even back then as an amateur. He perfected his style to where he didn't really need to use the jab against guys that didn't really have much power. He just walked them down. So I think, the first thing that we learned is that, well, I already knew this, but some of you guys may not have known this, is that Golovkin does not face power punchers the same way that he faces guys with no power. So Gil Monroe Jr., Matthew Macklin, he'll just walk you down. If you don't have anything there to get his respect. Now, when it comes to guys like Curtis Stevens, if you watch the Curtis Stevens fight, Golovkin was jabbing also. Against Lemieux, it was the same thing. And I really believe this was still about 50% of Golovkin. You can see just how calm he was in the ring. He was barely exerting any energy, while Lemieux was exerting a lot of energy. It kind of almost seemed like the Macklin fight, where Golovkin was just so calm. So, pound for pound right now, Golovkin has the best jab in the sport of boxing today. Quite possibly, one of the best jabs in the history of any middleweight in boxing, if not all boxers in the last 30 years. And the reason why I say this is because the jab was so accurate. His jab, he's so accurate with his punches. When he throws that jab, pretty much it's always going to land. And it's not just a jab out there to keep you away. It's that jab really is like a power jab, but he throws it as often as a regular jab. Another thing is, and this is what I've been saying all this time, is that the guy has exceptional defense. A lot of people say, they get over-exaggerate on how he gets hit, because he gets hit, 2 or 3 big shots, but those are the only shots he might get hit, in 3 rounds total, and then people will come out and say, oh, he's getting hit a lot. You never see any cuts. His face swells up, is the kind of face that swells up easily, but yet, none of those shots do any damage. He always leaves each fight without any marks. CompuBox shows it at, what was it, like 22%. The defense was exceptional in this fight at 17%. Lemieux only landed 17% of his punches against Golovkin. Now, when Mayweather's opponents land about 20%, remember, Mayweather's output is extremely low. Golovkin's output is extremely high. Golovkin is an offensive fighter. So the fact that Lemieux only landed 17% of his punches on Golovkin just shows how much more impressive Golovkin's defense is compared to someone like Mayweather's, whose output is extremely low. Because we all know, as an offensive fighter, it's hard to keep your opponents from hitting you, because the more active you are, the more openings you give your opponents. So the defense and the shoulder roll, if you see how Golovkin used the shoulder roll there, and Lennox Lewis had mentioned Golovkin keeps his hand down, his left hand down. Sure, he keeps his left hand down, but he rolls with it with the shoulder. So he anticipates exactly when you're going to be throwing a lead punch, and then he rolls with that shoulder. He did it again in this fight, and he did it again in the Stephens fight. And these are just subtle things that most people don't realize. Because remember, if you're a casual fan, just because you watch boxing as a fan doesn't really mean you really know much about the sport of boxing. Unless you've actually been around boxers themselves, been in the ring yourself, you really don't know these things. So you have a lot of guys out there that, are hardcore when it comes to watching fights, but they really know very little about the sport of boxing. And this is why those people, were basically saying that Golovkin has no skills and is flat-footed like a Margarito and he's easy to hit. But if you actually understand the sport of boxing and you've actually been in the ring, been around boxers, and you understand what the fundamentals of boxing is, and what the Eastern European school of boxing is, you'd understand that he was already doing these things prior, to his professional fights, and he was also doing this in the amateurs. So that's why it's kind of pointless to debate with these people, because I look at them as boxing noobs. They're kind of like just the guys that watch NBA or NFL. But boxing is the sweet science. It's a little bit more technical. So if they don't see someone running around in a circle, jumping up and down and exaggerating the shoulder roll, they think that the guy is just a power puncher. Another thing is, pound for pound right now, Golovkin's got to be one of the top pound for pound fighters. Now, people are going to talk about resumes, but who actually has? I mean, you could make the case for, let's say, a Kovalev, but the landscape of boxing, competition-wise, there's not a lot of, top-level fighters out there right now, like there were a couple years ago, late 80s, 90s. You could make a case of putting Kovalev ahead of Golovkin. I think my pound for pound, personally, I have Kovalev as number 1, Golovkin as number 2. You got to look at pound for pound as, who's dominating their weight class and how easily are they dominating their weight class. Now, people are going to come out and say 160 is a weak division, but I disagree with that, because Lemieux, Golovkin, Peter Quillin, Danny Jacobs, Andy Lee, Joe Saunders, you have a lot of up-and-comers coming up. Miguel Cotto and Canelo Alvarez. Cotto, Canelo, arguably one of the best fighters of our generation, who are middleweights right now. So you can make a case that middleweight division right now is extremely stacked, with Canelo and Cotto in the mix also. And you have this guy just dominating his competition like nobody else in the sport of boxing right now, compared to their weight class. Now, Rigo is not dominating his competition like Golovkin is. I mean, we all saw Rigo getting dropped by a complete bum. Let's see, Chocolatito, that wasn't a better performance than Golovkin's performance. Chocolatito fought a guy that, even though this Valoria is a skillful fighter, guy has an amateur pedigree, he looked a lot smaller than Gonzalez, and Gonzalez was taking a lot of shots. And the fact is that Gonzalez is a 112-pounder. I can't really consider him pound for pound in the top 5 until he starts moving up some weight classes. Now, we all know the jump from 112 to the next weight class is only like 3-4 pounds. The jump from middleweight to super middleweight is a full 8 pounds. Now, the male body peaks. The average male size is around 160, 170. After that, it's extremely hard to continue to put on muscle tissue. Now, we know that when you're in the lighter weight classes, it's easier to move up from one weight class to another weight class to another weight class, because the gaps are only between 3 to 5 pounds. Not only that, when you're smaller, it's easier to put on muscle tissue and continue to grow, especially since a lot of these guys suck 10, 15 pounds. So if they're fighting now, if they only start cutting 5 pounds, they automatically start jumping 3 weight classes up. Where you have a guy like Golovkin, the guy walks out 165 pounds 30 days before the fight. Okay? So really, he's a junior middleweight that's fighting at middleweight. Now, you have all the junior middleweights killing themselves trying to make weight to avoid facing Golovkin. There's no other explanation. Lara walks in close to 175 pounds, so does Trout, so does Canelo, so does Demetrius Andre, who's 6'1". So there's no other explanation I don't see, and also the Charlo brothers. There's no reason to continue to cut 15 to 20 pounds of water weight, fighting once or twice a year, unless you see a threat in the next weight class up. So